If you are new to programming, taking the CS50 course, or if you're just learning to program in new languages and take some additional courses, this video is for you, as we're going to be diving into how to actually download some of these programs and libraries that courses like CS50 in this example we'll be going through offer. We're going to be going over specifically how to get a local environment set up, such as if you wanted to use the terminal, VS Code, Vim, etc., and you did not want to use the IDE that CS50 or another course provides to you. I found this setup to be much faster, much cleaner, and a good learning experience. So let's jump into this CS50 example and get you set up so that you're not frustrated when you're trying to start for the new time and you're getting quizzed essentially on all of these random various systems questions, operating systems, GitHub, etc. Let's take that out of the way so that you can really start learning to code. First, for the CS50 library, we're going to go to their documentation, which you can find that down here. And this documentation, if you go to the web page, it's going to show you how to install the CS50 library. This library is what is going to give us our get string, the string data type, etc. And it's a library that is heavily used, especially in the first couple of lessons that they offer, because it allows you to understand some more higher level kind of basic ideas without having to dive right into some of the memory allocation and more confusing stuff that comes later in the course. In our case, we're going to be downloading from source. And what I'm going to do is I would click on that link to the latest source releases. And what that's going to bring me to is essentially this page right here. You'll see at the very top, you're going to have whatever the latest version is. There may be other versions, some may be stable versus not, etc. But what it's going to do is it's going to give you or show the zip file that we're going to need to download. And to download that easier and using the terminal, whether that terminal is VS Code, your actual terminal, etc., we're going to copy the link address for where this zip file is located on GitHub. This is going to take a decent amount of steps, or I guess you could say windows, and it's going to take a lot of clicking out of the situation and going to be much more of a direct kind of download that you can see and understand how it's linking to the program. What we're going to do is use that wget command, and that's going to download the actual zip folder, and it's going to download it in whatever directory you are currently in. And we'll see that it was saved as that v11.03 zip. We're going to unzip that, basically like the old days, and then we can remove the zip file. So what we're left with now is the unzipped directory containing the code for the library and its implementation, essentially. What we can do to actually see that we unzipped it and that it exists is we're going to use the ls command in our terminal, and this is just going to output all the directories and files that are in your current working or programming directory. You may see a bunch of other files if you have them there, but you should be sure to see that we now have this lib CS50 folder. We're going to change directories into that folder that we just unzipped and downloaded. We're going to run the make command. This is essentially going to compile that code, followed by a sudo make install. So basically a super user compilation and installation of this library to the object files and our binaries essentially. But don't worry about some of those details right now. Just know that we have essentially downloaded from GitHub, we have unzipped it, and we have installed the library and what's needed for it. What this is followed up by is we can actually jump into making some code to make sure that this is all working. To make sure that the library is included, you've probably seen this many times, you have to include the CS50 header file in that C code. And then once we have made our source code, we can go ahead and use Clang or GCC. Essentially, I mean, if we use, it depends kind of on your system and what you're using. Clang's supposed to be preferred, especially if you're on Mac or Linux. But you could also use the GCC compiler. But we're not going to get too deep into that. But what's important here is that we're linking the CS50 library during this compilation. And what linking it's going to do is make that library available and essentially accessible while the program is running. Now for the standard library at the top, which is giving us our printf, we don't have to do that because that library is automatically kind of installed with C and the system itself. Whereas for these more external downloaded libraries, we have to do the link. And essentially what's going on here, if we want to go through the whole command, is Clang, that's your compiler program. And then we have our source file, which is that hello world.c, this right here. And the -o, that means that we're going to give the output option for what our executable is going to be named. It's just going to be hello world. And then -l here is really what the option is. And followed by that is what we actually want to link. So we're essentially saying that we want to link the compiled CS50 library to our executable, not the source C file. Remember that. And if we want to run it, then it's just as simple as the /hello world and calling the executable. And now you should have the CS50 library and all of what it includes, including different structs, functions, etc. Especially in the beginning, you're going to work a lot with the get int or get string before you learn arrays more. But working with these libraries makes it much simpler for while you're doing the learning process. And it's especially important for when you do the problem sets. It's going to help you stay in scope and not go too broad outside of what you're supposed to be learning and when you're supposed to be learning it. All right, that library works. So we can move on to the check 50 and submit 50. These are going to be simple pip installs. Now what a pip install is, it's essentially one of the main Python library installers. And it will essentially, it's natively downloaded most of the time when you download Python. So you should make sure that you already have Python downloaded, or else this pip install is not going to work. If you don't have Python downloaded for some reason, you can head to this website right here and then click download Python. All right, after that pip install, we have our check 50 and submit 50 programs. But although we have these programs, you have to think, okay, what are these programs doing? They're using external code again, using the external GitHub code, you could say really again, and interacting with GitHub and essentially servers and the internet, etc. We can't just have these programs. We also have to be able to link these programs, or essentially link our use of the programs, such as when we submit, we want to be able to submit to or using our actual GitHub that's connected to the CS50 course. And in order to do this, we have to generate an SSH key. And what this key is going to allow us to do is essentially securely submit our code using our GitHub account. We first have to make this SSH key locally. And we're going to do that using that SSH-keygen program right here. And then you can just follow that up with here in your email in the parentheses if you want, or the quotes if you want. What that's going to do is it's going to generate essentially a directory that is to contain our identification. It basically says, okay, this is the name of the folder containing our keys and information is that ID _ ed255519. After that, we're going to run eval, and we're going to do the SSH-agent and then the space -s, so that we can actually use our SSH key and have it known, followed by an SSH-add command. And what's going to go right here is what was in, or basically the path of our directory containing our identification info. So you have to make sure to use that path rather than the one below. Top one is for a folder, bottom one is for an actual file, essentially within that folder. We also will want to do a copy of our public key. Now, this public key is going to be located in that .pub file, and to easily access it so that we don't have to actually open up the file itself, kind of search around and perfectly copy and paste it later on to GitHub in the correct way, we can instead use the pb copy command that's provided in Linux, Bash, Mac OS, and that. And then that's followed by the less than, and then our path again right here. So this is basically, it's the same thing as if we would have done this file path. That squiggly is really just saying the home or the user directory. You could have also done, let's change that up real quick just so it's more direct. You could have also done /users/ I don't know, your username for your computer. That's for your local computer is what it is. And that file. Now that we have this copied, it's essentially if you were to right click on something, like if I was to double click and right click to copy, it's doing the same exact thing, just using the command line. It's directly copying the text for that public key. And now we can finally use that public key to connect to our and authenticate with our GitHub account so that these programs can actually work as they're supposed to. What we're going to do is we're going to open up GitHub, the actual GitHub website. If you go to your profile and then settings, you'll see that there's an option for SSH and GPG keys. You'll click on that and hit to create a new SSH key at the top. You can title it whatever you want it to be titled. Just know that's going to be public to whatever. You can call it, I don't know, my SSH key, etc. And then, importantly, where it says key in the box there, this is where you're going to Command or Control V or paste what we have currently copied to our clipboard thanks to that pb copy command. We're going to just paste it right in there, not change anything, direct paste it. And then click add SSH key. And this what this is going to do is it's essentially going to authenticate the connection between your local machine and GitHub account so that they can be linked and you can basically be identified when you submit these projects. If we didn't have this linkage going on, CS50, we could send remember, we're sending our data and we're sending our information to them to grade and check for both the Check50 and submit. If we didn't have it connected to our GitHub like this, they wouldn't know who submitted it. And how are they supposed to grade or give you your valuable certificate if you're not authenticated and your name's not on your code? All right, that was a lot of stuff. But we're finally getting to where we can actually use our Check50 and Submit50 commands finally. And don't worry, once you've done this, you're good. You're going to be able to keep working locally in your same workspace, and all you're going to have to use is on the problems, like basically the problem sets that they provide. They give you pretty good details on the actual command and inputs to use for both Check50 and Submit50. And here we're looking at the specifically it's set 2, the Scrabble problem. And to exemplify it and how Check50's gonna work, we're just gonna literally copy what they say. It's Check50 and then the path. And what this path is essentially what our source code is being checked against on GitHub. So this is essentially the path of the CS50 professors and what they wrote as the test and correct problems, etc. And since we have this program now, so simply we just run the check 50 followed by the path, which again, you're going to copy and paste from the sets. And it's going to do all of our checks. And you can see here, like I had all the checks correct. So we're good. And one important thing to note, and this is essentially important for when we move on to the submit 50, is that your check 50 and submit 50, what it's going to be checking in the check 50 case and submitting in the submit 50 case is your actual C file, not the compiled file, just so that you know. Now for submit 50, works almost identical, essentially identical to the check 50 command. We're putting in the submit 50 program followed by the GitHub location for CS50, just like we could copy and paste from the problem set here. And when we run that, it's going to perform that GitHub authentication check and submit it using our GitHub account. And what's cool is they will also give you at the end in your terminal output, you'll see a URL for your actual submission, and you can see more details about that. And there we have it. I hope you all enjoyed and continue to stick around. Please make sure to comment any things that you're confused about or what you have specific interest in. I hope to be doing more of these longer videos as we go, and I'm excited to code with y'all.